Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast where every week, a couple of your friends, we get together and we sit around a campfire and tell you a spooky story. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. So I will do a quick recap of the settings we have so far, and we want to focus this time on really hammering out the actual beginning, middle, end of the story using our story elements, but still. Okay, so we are looking at a just post World War I. The war has just been called off. Reed, what year was that the Great World War I was?
1918.
So it's 1918, right? And the war has literally just ended. It's coming down the wires now. However, this sort of group of the good guys were in a trench, and they were told to go over the top and sort of take this other entrenched, just trench warfare. They were told to go over the top and take this other entrenched area. So they did. It was about 200 of them or so, in this sort of area, went over the top and started making their way across, receiving no sort of fire from the enemies. And they came to the enemy trenches and found them empty. They thought that was kind of strange. So then they went back and they found their own trenches empty.
And you said there was like kind of a fog?
Yep. I was just about to say that. And a fog started to roll in, and it was kind of creepy and weird. And so this whole story takes place in about a 1 to 2 day, excuse me, sort of time span. They, after sort of all command, not being able to get in contact with anyone, begin to sort of go to the neighboring town, try and find what in the world is going on. What in the world is going on is the feeder is our villain. He is a immortal sort of protector, proctor, administrator of the Fountain of Youth. Fountain of Youth was found. It is the chemical that causes people to, live long and I was gonna say and prosper, live long and, be healed from all their ails and everything like that, is the offshoot of this sort of crustacean creature. The feeder sort of brokers deals with various countries in order to give them access to this material. He will work for you. Doesn't matter what side you're on. He doesn't really care. But he is sort of a bad guy. He has no morals or qualms about killing people. He's been alive since the beginning since when the Fountain of Youth was originally found. And he sort of gets people access to this Fountain of Youth, this liquid, right, from this crustacean, which if you just drink the liquid, like diluted in water, then you'll, be able to sort of work harder and be awake and recover from your ails faster. And, you'll just generally be able to carry out war in a much more powerful way. It has an addictive quality, but at that level, it's not really, you might have like a bad dream or kind of get kind of an itch for it after a while. The big thing is when people start to consume more. And what happens is as you consume more, the DNA of this creature attaches itself more and more to you, and then there starts to be a balance shift between how much human DNA and how much creature DNA you have. If you consume the crustacean creatures, then this happens at an even faster pace and you begin to change. Both sides have used this to varying degrees in order to fight each other. But now at the end of the war is over and it's time. The feeder has ordered all creatures to begin the luring process, which is to make this mist come out of their bodies that covers the area, and that anyone who has a bit of this DNA in them will be attracted to these much more powerful superhumans, and then they will consume those people, therefore reducing the amount of people that have access to this power. It's kind of a gruesome and terrible thing, but it's happening now in our story. Couple of people of note. You have our hero, who was one of these more like kind of super soldiers who was starting to go insane and, get violent, and his body was going to begin to change, and he was going to, get claws, and sort of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of situation going on. And he was confronted by a monk from the Orient who had traveled from the Orient to help people recover from this. So by sort of various kung fu methods, he was able to arrest the sort of rampant mutation that was happening in people's bodies and allowing them to come down from it very slowly. So in this story, we have what starts out at about 200 people. And it's probably going to whittle down to about 20 people by the end as they sort of travel around and find, it's like a mystery, but also kind of like a horror escape. It's like they need to get out of where all this mist is because everyone is like groggy, and the mist is kind of making everyone confused as these kind of super soldiers are trying to lure in the last of the affected populace so that they can cover their tracks, all directed by the feeder. Was that his name?
Yeah, we just call him the feeder.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, okay. So what story elements did you guys have? I have unique vehicle. How about you guys?
I have a wild card, which in this case is kind of a hybrid between unique pet and wise old man.
Nice.
I have happy ending.
Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad. This is like this is the perfect kind of story. It's kind of like Lovecraftian enough that it could really have a really sad ending. Like a really terrible, horrifying ending. Reed, do you want to tell us about your wild card?
Yeah. Okay. Well, back in the day, prior to the explorers or the conquistadors, whoever were, rooting around in the jungles of South America looking for gold and or the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
There was a witch doctor that had, they'd been aware of this, the effect of this filter feeder, this crustacean rock-like feeder, and he had been a user and experimented with the fountain of youth elixir, right? But about the time that European explorers discovered his work, he was like almost destroyed by the effects of addiction and overuse. And he was afraid that they were going to catch him and torture him to get his secrets. And he was able to transfer his consciousness to Jenga. Jenga was a jaguar he raised from a kitten. The kitten's mother had been killed. And he raised this kind of tame, but now it was a full-grown jaguar. But there was something about the metabolism of this jaguar that could tolerate the substance in a different way.
Okay.
And so now, hundreds of years later, this witch doctor / jaguar is still alive, and and he's got a consciousness. He can communicate through telepathy. And he has a special affinity and seeks out people that have certain saturation levels.
Okay.
And managed to make his way. And he found our hero because he was really attracted to the fact that this guy was, had and sort of attached himself. So you could say this guy was kind of a / unique pet / wise old man slash hero's sidekick. But he's really cool. He's a jaguar. I mean, fast and strong and like powerful bites and scratchy feet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Cool.
So he just attached himself to the hero.
But he has conscious thought, right?
Yeah, because he has the old witch doctor's consciousness,
Okay.
So, and part of his agenda is to thwart the evil doers that would exploit this secret because he holds it as sacred. So there's that. Anyway, I thought
that's great.
It's time to have a pet jaguar in the story.
There's a pet jaguar. We never really discussed where this would be happening at.
I figured in Europe, like in the trenches, right?
Right, but I mean, Europe, is that like a 2 mile by 2 mile size area? Obviously not. Like it's a big
Western
place.
Front, like Belgium or France.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So the unique
the east of France.
The unique vehicle is a British Mark. Is that a 5 or a V? I don't know how you call it. Is this thing read? Is this the Mark 5?
I gotta put on my. Oh yeah, they're so cool. Those are like those old tanks where the treads go all the way around, and so then they
can cross over
long trenches and stuff. Yeah.
So it's a British Mark 5.
Cool.
I
always wanted one of those.
Yeah. But it's a special one.
Okay.
It's not just any normal one. So by 1918. Right. I believe. Okay, no, I'm not going to go with that. I'll go with my original thought. It's basically a laboratory.
Okay.
Right? A scientist. She has, in order to sort of combat the nerve gas and the kind of terrible amounts of chemical warfare that was used.
Right.
She had basically a mobile triage unit inside of one of these tanks.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have the gun ports, don't have guns in them anymore.
Right.
But it's been retrofitted to basically travel. It doesn't travel as fast, but it can travel twice the distance.
Yeah.
And it's also hermetically sealed.
Cool.
So she can close it and seal it. I don't know what the occupancy was. I think it was like 5 people. For one of these.
Well, crew. No, they had a bigger crew than that. That was a big beast of a thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess the thing I was reading said 5, but
maybe
I'm wrong. Anyways, we'll say 5.
Okay.
So it's not like a thing that as soon as it rolls up, all 40 people can just like kind of hop in and then like drive to safety. So
it's not a clown car.
Right. And it's not the Deus Ex Machina,
right.
That we all hope it is when it first arrives. But what it does is it is kind of this place that's separate. And this is the vehicle by which we learn about what the fog is. We learn about some of the context of the chemical composition, and this scientist woman and her kind of crew of 4, they're like commando scientists, right? They're like, they started out as big hunks who didn't know anything, but then through the war of just like being with her, they're like all like scientists now,
Yeah.
And she is kind of this, she doesn't do any fighting, but she just studies and she creates various counter agents, for different types of different types of chemical warfare. She's just
right.
So it's this vehicle, people can ride on top of it, I guess, but it comes and joins and gives a bunch of context. It's the vehicle by which a bunch of context is released about like what this mist actually is, when they dissect a deer that's been fed a bunch, because like you feed a bunch of animals this liquid, or dogs, and their bodies, the same thing happens,
Right.
and so they're having to not only fight people and crazies, but like dogs that have like crustaceans to make them like bulletproof. Seth and I, who was I that was talking to that this would make a really great video game.
Yeah, we were talking about
But
that.
anyways, so it's kind of like it's a Mark V, slow lumbering tank. The gun ports on the sides,
Yeah.
they're retrofitted so that they can fire like counter nerve agents,
Right.
quick acting tranquilizer style nerve agents, very kind of weird out and not futuristic, but weird and techie, not
Mhm.
just bullets to mow people down, but like a flamethrower,
Right.
Anyways, that's a unique vehicle. So maybe there's some romance between the main character and her. I don't know.
That would be good.
I'm not the one in charge of romance.
He told the witch doctor he was in love with her. Boom, 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 boom.
So Seth, oh no, you have happy ending. So we should
Yeah.
lay the groundwork for the story.
Yeah.
So we kind of have the beginning, right? It's just a normal day in World War I,
Mhm.
And the hope is that this last great push that they're going to go, if they can secure this, they can secure this line, this hardwire line, they can cut that. That'll, allow them to cut off a bunch of attacks, and they do this attack and they find the trenches empty, and then they go back, they find the trenches empty, and then the mist starts pouring in, fog starts pouring in. And really quickly, we have a couple, Reed, you're going to have to help me out with military nomenclature as far as chain of command stuff, but
So I think when they go over to the other trench, they do find a couple prisoners or like wounded that are in, just kind of like left for dead. And I think that's where the hero comes from.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so that's where he kind of comes in. He's kind of like half wounded, but he's real all kind of mangled looking, right?
Right.
But they bring him back. And I think that's where one of the characters we talked about last time, our Native American friend, who, I think he might be onto some of this.
Right.
And so it's kind of like one of those things where it's like out of the woodwork come like 5 or 6 of these people in this, I don't know, the platoon or kind of regiment.
This would be about probably a battalion-sized outfit we were talking about last time. And
yeah, which is about how many people?
It varies, but maybe like 400 to 500. Like 3 companies of guys under the command of a colonel.
Yeah, so I think it definitely starts there.
Yeah.
But then there's the 5 kind of key characters.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your head, your hero, right? Who's this kind of, he took this super soldier, program in order to, make a difference, whatever. But he's like, before the monk finds him, he's like struggling to maintain sanity.
Right.
You have your Native American guy who's kind of like seeing a bunch of old family or old tribe legends,
mm-hmm.
like the way people are acting and the mist and everything like that, sort of starting to come true. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of initially gets the place of kind of the witch doctor kind of position, because he, as you do often in times like that, just like snap back into tradition, And
I think either his father or his grandfather was like an old time medicine man from their tribe.
Right. And maybe he's a medic, and maybe that's kind of part of his whole thing. I don't know if there were medics in World War I, but there probably were. So there's those 2. And then we said once that there was going to be like a religious. Oh, I don't remember.
I think that was in a different one.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that's in a different one. Then you have the monk, obviously. And then I think we should also have kind of a higher ranking guy who is like half intelligence, and he's got like a leather binder that he just keeps with him all the time. Doesn't let anyone get near, and he is half like I'm in charge, but then half like you need to protect me at all costs,
And I think initially he has like, 4 or 5 goons. I say goons, but kind of like people that are directly under his platoon that answer kind of directly to him.
Right.
And so they're kind of a larger part of that unit, but they have their own
directives.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's a couple of sort of key-ish characters. I think that the monk is also one of the prisoners that they find initially, and he and the Native American guy kind of bond really quickly because they can kind of both sense that they belong to a tradition that's older than just what they have right here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I want the process of the monk sort of not healing, but like helping the because this is only going to take like 2 days or 3 days. I want the process of whatever he does to the hero to happen relatively early on so that we can see that kind of develop as things go along, where he learns to kind of release the chemical in his body, in interesting and fun ways, like to lift up a tank or something.
Yeah.
In some kind of crazy way. And it kind of graduates and gets more powerful. But the idea is I want to see like after an area of time, he starts to get less powerful because the idea is that he's consuming, his body is consuming the creature's ability inside of him, or I don't know how you say it. It's like the power. It's like there's 100% him, and then there's 50% of the creature. And every time he uses the power, it consumes some of that. But since he's not continuing to consume the creature's essence at all through the water or anything else, it doesn't come back.
Right. The notes that I had is that this monk that can alter the way, somebody he is treating, so to speak, metabolizes the substance, and then the hero has learned to kind of let it out slowly. That's the way I wrote it down.
Yep.
Yeah. So that he doesn't suffer the trauma of these abrupt,
right. And if he wants more power, he can let out more, but then he risks the sort of the craziness of the essence kind of taking him over. And then yeah.
And of course, if he ever gets in real trouble, he could just have Jenga just go rip their enemy's throat out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when does he meet Jenga then? Because they do like the whole charge to the enemy trenches.
Well,
find nothing.
I'm thinking that Jenga has already sought him out, and he's already, because he's kind of like a forward, surveillance sniper, spy, scout type guy,
Or
Okay.
Jenga is with the scientist lady in the tank.
Oh, that's an interesting.
Or that, yeah, that could be interesting. Jenga could be like the willing test subject. It's from Jenga is where she got all of her sort of information, because he is like has this ability. He this thing is part of him, but he's not like insane.
Right, and he's been dealing with it for like a couple of 100 years.
Right. So then they go back to their own. So they go to the trench, find nothing, find the prisoners. Things are kind of weird. Things start to break down, right, as the mist starts to roll in, and then they travel back, losing people, right? Because anyone who has this substance in them when the mist touches them, they feel drawn to
Right.
these super soldiers who are sort of hiding like around this area. And so people are like sloughing off and leaving. And so the sort of command structure is starting to break down.
Right.
And they make it back to their side of the trench, and everyone's gone there as well. And all the wires are cut and all the radios are dead. And so then sort of a pseudo kind of structure is formed, you know, with the hero and the Native American guy and the Shaolin monk guy, the Oriental guy. I don't know, Shaolin monk. I don't want to say Shaolin monk because I don't know what Shaolin is. So I'm just going to call him the Oriental monk guy. They are kind of not really respecting the chain of command, but there as well as the hero kind of learns what it is he can do and sort of starts to figure that out, you know, struggling still with the kind of going insane thing. They start making their way towards a town that was relatively untouched. Maybe it was behind enemy lines. That's why they want to check it out. And then they start getting accosted on the way there by people who are going crazy, you know, and start attacking them. And so it kind of turns into kind of a bit of a zombie shooter. And then they're, you know, running and they're...
I think what would happen is, so after they come back, you have kind of the chain of command sets up like a temporary base or a central place of operations, start sending people out a couple hours, come back, which could happen within a couple days' time to kind of scout out the other sides of the trench, the other enemy's trench. So I think you've got like smaller groups going out and finding basically what's going on in the broader area, coming back, reporting some of this stuff, and then making probably from there their way either back across to the enemy lines or back into their own lines, seeking kind of the best route, you know, to where, you know, an exit point is, or wherever there might be, you know, the next chain of command that they can report to.
Right. So that, what do you mean? I thought this whole thing was taking place in like 1 or 2 days.
Right. So they get back to the trench. The colonel then, you know, separates them into the different, you know, I don't know, sergeants or captains, sends, you know, 10, 12 people up the trench that way, 10, 12 people up the trench that way, a couple groups back over to the other trench to see what they can find, and then they have to keep coming back. You know, and so then some of the groups come back, some people come back from some of the groups, report some of like, okay, we're starting to hit this stuff. Okay, something weird's going on over there. Okay, this path is open. So then when they all come back, you know, then it would be about noon. Then they start heading out in one of the directions that they feel is, you know, the safest. Then they start finding something there. You know, they send a couple groups out, you know, and they start hitting this different resistance that seems to be either hedging them in, you know, and kind of picking them off. But that's, I don't know, I would think that's what they would do.
Right. So
something like that to kind of get a larger view of what's going on. So the whole group isn't going into this village, but one of the smaller platoons.
Right. Or this has been going on for a little bit. This story doesn't start at that, but that is the thing that started the story. And this has been going on now for a week, and they can't see any way out. And the only thing that they can see as a way out is to like go get to this town. Because if we can get to this, like, we're operating in a trench, but a trench has one front line.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very defensible from the side, behind it.
Right.
It's not, the whole idea of trench warfare isn't having a very defensible place. What we need to do is we need to get to a place. And that would also work really well, because that means that the hero would have more time to have sort of acclimated to this thing, you know?
Right.
So then he is now, you know, either a leader of one of these groups, you know, or you know, yeah, I'd say he's a leader of one of these 10 or 12 man groups, and they, in the course of traveling out to see what's going on, come across the tank, maybe being accosted by a couple of sort of these super soldiers who are a bit more changed,
Yeah.
So they're like 7 feet tall, and they've got like crustacean pincers, and they're kind of like changed, and they have to like sort of fight them off, and then they find this tank, and they're like, oh, perfect, a tank, we can use this, and they go up to it, and it's like, oh, there's people inside. I'm just trying to figure out, because we have to move towards an end of the story. So I'd say
Right,
that the thing that you're talking about, Seth, makes a lot of sense, but we need to, how do we move towards do we want to say the story ends with a sort of a town siege? Maybe the
Right. So one of the things going on that we mentioned last time is, from a historical standpoint, Spanish flu was a big thing that actually started killing more people than World War I was.
Right.
And something that we brought up was that is how some of what was going on in this story was being portrayed, is as the war was coming to an end, like behind the scenes, they had made the agreement. So this isn't the, the Versailles peace agreement. This isn't, none of that's happened yet that the world stage sees, but, the people pulling the strings that, the people pulling the strings of the people pulling the strings, call it off. And then they have to start cleaning up, and the feeder is having to then organize, the super soldiers to come down. Because I think that's one of the things you said, when they ate the flesh of someone that has less of it, they start coming down.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so he starts coordinating that. And so basically towns, sections of the trench, and then they're writing it off as this, quote unquote Spanish flu.
Right.
And so you've got it decimating, whole platoons, whole areas that they're just not hearing from, and no one died in the battle, but it's this, Spanish flu, and now it's, settling in as they're sending more people home, right? Different people are going back, and this Spanish flu is popping up in all these other places as they're covering up.
Right.
Kind of this kind of sideline thing. Kind of our main group is now slightly immune to that, because I think they were all wearing their masks.
Yep, they
right,
had,
because of all the chemical warfare.
Yep.
So they were pretty stringent about wearing the mask. So a lot of them, that's why they kind of survived when everybody else around them was kind of, fed.
And the tea that the Native American guy was making.
Correct, which kind of expelled some of the, subtle effects. And so a lot of them were, not the ones wandering off. And
Right.
Eventually what I think is they start making their way to the coast. So as they're doing like slight little, like, not espionage, but like seek out missions, as they keep finding the best way to get out of, where all this fog is, where all this stuff is, right? And I would say they're making their way to the coast.
Okay.
Either I don't know, I would think north coast, but I don't know if that's going to be, maybe the south coast.
Of France?
Of France. Because part of the happy ending is what you get is you need sunshine, and I don't know that there's a lot of sunshine on the northern border. There probably is, but the point is that eventually, coming from their initial thing, as they've kind of been whittled down, worn down, made their way through the trenches, kind of hop back and forth, trying to find the best route out of this, to find anything that's normal. As they keep moving towards the coast, and eventually, as part of the ending, they get to, the coast, they break out of the fog, and it's, the sunshine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because that was one of the things that I can remember with the Spanish flu, was that, with all the healing and medicines that they were using to help people wasn't having as much effect, and what they ended up doing was simply bringing people out into the sunshine.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I think that part of what they figure out is, that's what it is that that sunlight exposure, I don't know, vitamin D exposure you get from the sun, either counteracts the the effects of that fog or of the crustacean.
Yeah, that works. I like that.
And so it's kind of like a happy ending, as you got your main group of characters, kind of band of brothers thing going on, and you've kind of, at this point, you've got a mix of Germans and Americans and British, and as they've kind of come across, let's say, other survivors that are just trying to not get eaten, and they've had enough of the war by now. And so they kind of all that last group of 20, 30 people that make it, kind of make it out. They make it to the coast. They kind of set up camp, and then they hear, the armistice has been, called, the war was over, whatever, the couple weeks ago, everyone's got their, papers to go home.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have, that, they survive it, they kind of figure out the sunshine thing. But then again, that guy that kind of knows, I think maybe he gets, because I think deep down, I think he knew, but then he wasn't able to get out. And so that's why maybe all throughout this, he's really jittery. And again, he won't say, and then they finally kind of pin him down to say that he was, he had originally brought the order for, different things to be put in place. But then, maybe he got injured and he couldn't get, back out. But then again, you have, the kind of the sinister forces behind the scenes.
Yeah, or it's one of those things where he, it's you realize and find out that he wasn't, the whole time he was kind of playing up as if he was intelligence and he was trying to figure out what was going on, and he had crucial information to tell the good guys about what was going on. But then you find out that he is intelligence, he is working for the quote-unquote good guys, but he was also the feeder's liaison for this area and supposed to kind of watch the area. And, whether or not he dies in the end, I guess it's a happy ending, so you get to decide. But, World War I was really messed up. There were a lot of really crazy things that happened, and no one's quite sure why or how they happened the way they did. Yeah. And so it's not without a shadow of a doubt that good men in places of power said, we have to use this terrible thing.
One of two things could happen. One, they get the idea that they're not really welcome, or other people approach them and kind of give them the ultimatum, right? That they have, 24 hours to, make the right written statement about what they saw and experienced.
Right.
Or there was a freighter, kind of hint, hint, wink, wink, the Titanic 2 that would be bringing them home. So,
yeah. Or it could be one of those things where they were all thanked very much for their service and then demoted into oblivion and then shipped back to their countries of origin.
Right,
And
so that's what I was getting at. It's either two things could happen. Either one, like that, what you just said, they all kind of go home with the knowledge and kind of then portraying that, like, they need to be on the watch in case they try to use this again, or just like they're gonna like stay out of it next time, or I don't know, who knows, whatever. They kind of go home, they're alive, they're healthy, and the war's over, happy ending. Or we could take it a different route, where you have someone who, like our Oriental monk, who I think we had established came here knowing that that's what was going on.
Yes.
And then, like, not to like pull an Avengers, right? But like invites them all then to because again, now what you have is you do have like a mixed bag of
right,
little few people from all these places, and kind of their countries don't know what to do with them now, maybe.
Right.
And so kind of in the dead of the night, they all go to, go with our monk friend, to his
yeah, I'm starting a team sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, this is obviously the monk knows it's like this is going on, and so now you have like the scientist, and the leopard, or not the leopard, the jaguar,
right?
And it's like, I think something like you said earlier too, like a Batman idea, right? But it's kind of Avengers, but they, all coming out of this and like establishing a base, I don't know, wherever, and like I don't know.
Yeah, Nikola Tesla.
Somewhere on
Nikola Tesla
what's
was alive from 1856 to 1943. So in 1918, he would have been how old? So there could be. So I don't know. I like Nikola Tesla a lot. This is kind of like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen-esque.
Yeah, something like that.
I like that. I think that's a good ending, where he kind of says, what I was thinking of is that instead of this intelligence guy being like the unfortunate bad guy who's like, I'm just following orders and doing the bad thing, he does like he has the notebook, like the notebooks, and he's talking to them, being candid with them for the first time, and he's just saying like, I can't let this go out to the press because this war will restart faster than it'll restart faster. And
here's another twist to that.
Wait. My twist first. Okay, and he's just sitting there, and they're all kind of irritated at him. Maybe someone has a gun to his head or something, because he has just told them that he's gonna like, he's known about this thing the whole time and blah blah blah. And he's sitting there like, I can't tell them, so I can't bring this to the press. But there are a lot of things we can do, because this isn't the end. They say this is the war to end all wars, but as long as the feeder's alive, this will always be a thing. And he lets them know that, like, you can come with me, and we can actually try and change this, or I can send you back to wherever, and you can try and pretend like this didn't happen. But you're gonna be killed. I'm gonna have to order your death if you try and tell people. And so it's kind of like this moment. It's a beginning moment. It's like, you need to come to America. We're starting something there. This is 1918. Nikola Tesla didn't die till 1943. There's plenty of time inside of there. Make another book, have another story, whatever. What's your thing, Seth?
Oh, my twist on that is like pretty much everything you said, except for the fact that the guy that, this character, he was the feeder's liaison. These were the secret documents he had that was overseen. However, him and that group, they were like counterintelligence of the other side. Let's say in this case, it would have been, like, I don't know, a German like spy operatives that basically had studied him, like caught him in the middle of the night, basically offed him, threw him out in no man's land, and they all took their place so they could basically steal documents
Right.
and information.
Right.
However, then you have this happen, and so now what you have is basically, I would say that maybe in this case, the German intelligence from there's like a sub side of the Germans that see what the feeder's doing and are trying to get, the dirt on him because, all this, they know the bigger thing is happening, and this was their like weak link that they could get in on. Right?
I still don't know.
And so kind of at the end, this, whatever intelligence officer that's on, whatever the quote unquote American side, right? That's kind of a bit fidgety. They find out he's like the feeder's liaison,
right.
Has these secret documents, is really hush-hush about all this stuff. So all that is there, but the twist of it is that he's not actually that guy. That guy was ousted and replaced by a counterintelligence team.
Okay.
To steal the documents and all the stuff that they had, right? But before they could get out, and back, then they get caught up in this. And so most of the time, they're all having to keep pretending to be that, liaison for the feeder.
Right. But they're actually
But
not.
they also have all those documents, because that's what they're after. They were after these documents and these orders and the connections and all this stuff.
Right.
Right? So it's kind of all the same, except like another double
agent. I'm fine.
Another double agent behind that.
I'm fine with any of that. That's totally fine with me. I just like the idea. I mean, you have happy endings, so you get to decide. I just like the idea of him basically saying, we have to be secretive. But if you want, there's more work to be done of this same manner. There's two ships. He'll basically, like, he's sitting there. They're all sitting around. He's like, there's two ships. One is this ship. It'll take you, to this port, which you can go wherever you need to go from there. The other one has no name. It has no name because it has no home port. This fight is going to continue.
The Nautilus.
And so then he just kind of walks off, as then they notice the Mark V being loaded into that one.
Yeah.
And surprise, surprise, she was working for this organization the whole time, this super secret organization that like doesn't have a country of origin. It's like they belong to a directive higher than countries. The Illuminati. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Unless you guys have any other ideas?
I just think it's interesting.
No, I think that's good.
I think it's interesting that, of course, in actual history, there was kind of a fog around the way the war ended. And I mean, it wasn't like the Allies, completely crushed the German troops and stormed in and conquered Germany. I mean, they just had an armistice. And in fact, part of Hitler's whole propaganda routine was that we were stabbed in the back and we were dealt this dirty deal and we hadn't really been defeated. And, anyway, it laid the seeds for World War II, obviously.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better, and this series of Wait It Gets Better, which I think is one of our better stories, in my opinion. If you like this episode or series of episodes, let us know. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or add us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you thought that we got all of our history incorrect, you're going to have to take that up with Reed, who was my resident history guy. Send us a Twitter. Tweet at us at @getsbettercast if you have any cool ideas for future stories. And we will see you guys on the next one. Bye.